course of this visit, we will see together about 1,000 years worth of native history in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, and also we'll have a glimpse on the actual situation, the political situation here for the native. My name is Andian Herete, that means the one who conquered fire. But also I have a French name, much easier to remember. It's Dominique. So if you have any question, you can call me Dominique, no problem. I like to start a visit with the canoes because you have to know that before the arrival of the Spanish in America, we did not have any horses. Okay, and we did not use the dog sled in the everyday life. The Wendat were experts as a canoe builder, and that was the principal mean of transportation. The traditional canoe was made out of white cedar wood. This is white cedar. By putting the trunks of the tree long enough in the water, you can separate all the parts of the trunk and unbend the trunk to make your structure for the bottom of the canoe. And after that, you cover your bottom with all the planches made out of white cedar. The structure is then covered with birch bark. Look at the nice sheets that we have on this canoe here. Of course, a long time ago, there was not as much pollution, so the trees were much more healthier. So it was easier to get a really resistant birch bark. All the pieces of the canoe, they held together with spruce roots. That was our string that we used. And sometimes people found a copper mine in the Niagara Falls area, and they started to build a canoe with nails made out of copper. They don't rust, so it was easier to keep the canoe much longer. In the 70s, there was still more than 1,000 canoe made in the village every year. But today, we don't make them anymore because they are mass-produced in plastic or fiberglass, and we don't make wooden canoes anymore on the reserve. But there is something that we still make here, and they're the snowshoes. Have you ever seen one of those? Yeah? Guys, have you ever seen those? The snowshoes. They were made out of ash wood. And this thing here, in French, we call babiche. It's a very funny sounding name, babiche. That means raw hide. It's raw animal skin. Traditionally, the natives used the skin of a moose or a caribou to make one pair of snowshoe. Okay? When you work the leather to make clothing, you take out the fat. You wash the skin, you let it dry. But in the snowshoe making, you don't take off the fat. You make one strip of leather with one skin of animal. And the size of your snowshoe depends of the weight of the person who's going to wear it. So this one here is quite big. It could be used by you, sir. I would give you that kind of snowshoe. Well, not because you're big, because you're a tall man, you know? But
thank you.
For a woman, I would use this one here. Look how cute this one is. For a woman, that would be appropriate. This permits you to go really fast into the woods and you don't sink into the snow. Okay? Today, on the reserve, we still make those. Okay? Many Quebecers prefer to use the traditional snowshoes still today. So we still make those on the reserve, but we also make aluminum snowshoe. We have a very big industry on the reserve that permits us to hire about 50 persons making aluminum snowshoe. And they are so well known that we even send them to Norway. That's how big this industry is here. So you can buy traditional snowshoe as well as modern snowshoe on our reserve. So when the men travel in the woods wearing their snowshoes and they had things to carry around with them, there was one way to carry your luggage. It was by using the sled that you see here. Today, the kids use the sled to slide. on a mountain. But I like to call it the open-air suitcase. You put your things, your peltry, your tools on the square spaces, and it was the man that put the rope on his forehead to carry the sled behind him. The more he did it during winter time, the more the muscles in the neck grew stronger. And it was easier to carry the sled when the winter was longer. So do you have any question on the ways of transportation? Okay, we will now see the teepee right here. Follow me. In a couple of minutes, we will visit the longhouse used by the sedentary, those who live in villages. The teepee was used by the nomads. So the Wendat never used the teepee in their life, only the nomads. In the province of Quebec, they could be found in the north, when there were summer camps to go to, or in the prairies, when they want to travel behind a herd of buffaloes, which was their food, the nomad would use the teepee. Originally, the teepee was made out of buffalo skin. It was a little bit smaller than this one here. Imagine, it was 6 meters high by 6 meters wide. Made of buffalo skin, it was really, really heavy. About 75 kilograms. Would you like to carry that with you every day? I wouldn't. So that is why when the French arrived in Canada, they brought us cotton. So little by little, the nomads could obtain cotton and make their teepees out of cotton. It was way lighter, way easier to carry. And when the Spanish arrived in America, they brought horses. They let loose a couple of horses. They got baby horses, and eventually the nomads could use horses in their life. So it was only the nomads who used the teepees. If you come closer to me, you will see on this map where there are still natives in the province of Quebec today. We are still about 100,000 people. You see the green half circles, they are Inuits living in the north still. Kuujjuaq, the most popular city in the north, is really, really far away from here. We are still 11 nation of natives in the province of Quebec. That's 57 reserve. We are here. Wendake, we are the only one survivors of the war that occurred at the beginning of the 17th century between us and the Iroquois. So we are the only Wendat reserve left in all of the country. And we are very lucky because we are close to a big city, Quebec City. So we have access to tourism, we have very good industries. Our reserve is the most prosperous in all of the province of Quebec. But you should not look at us and say, oh well, the situation of the native is great in the province. Here in the north, they don't have access to education, to enough jobs. They have social problems. Sometimes they don't even have electricity. So the government, the federal government, has to take care of all of those people because since 1876, we are under the Indian Act. That means that we are the children of the government. Okay? Natives are considered minor in face of the law. So the government has to provide for every Indian that lives and works on a reserve, has to pay for education, for eye care, dental care, for everything that they need in their basic life. And also, if you work and live on a reserve, you don't pay taxes. So there are some advantages of this Indian Act. The problem is that the land on which the reserve is built doesn't belong to us. You can have your own house, you cannot have the land it's built on. Okay? So the government can do whatever they want with the land. Luckily, we have been able to buy some new land recently, so the reserve will be enlarged in the next couple of years. Some new streets are currently built, so that is a good thing. We are very lucky compared to other nations from the north. Okay, that is the actual political situation of the native in the province of Quebec. Do you have questions? Okay, now we will see the infrastructure of the reserve in 2014. Come on. Your long houses, where is the reserve? Well, every street that you see around this side, it is the actual reserve, except that the traditional way of life has been gradually abandoned since 1750. So it's been a while since we live in houses exactly like yours. So here we want to show you how does it look on our reserve in 2014. So this is our school. We have a school on the reserve. They teach from kindergarten to 12 years old. So the kids can go to school until 12 years old and then go to a school, high school, college in Quebec City. We have perfectly good schools there. But in the north, they have to travel many, many miles to go to a proper school. So once again, here we have a very exceptional situation. This is the band council. We don't have a mayor on the reserve, we have a chief. This is the current chief, Conrad Siwi. He's been elected in 2008, re-elected in 2012, and that's where he works. Simple office. And the federal government has to ratify every decisions that are taken by the chief. On this picture here, you can see all the men and women who's been chief of the nation since the picture exists. This one here, Taurenche, he's been the last one in 1870 to be named by a clan mother. As I will explain to you later, every clan had a clan mother, and every one of those women named one man to be the chief of the clan. He's been the last one to be named by a woman. After him, it's been election, so all of the community has been able to have a saying in who will be the chief. So right now it's Conrad Siwi, and he works there. This is our church. It's been built in 1730. It is a national classified monument, and we are still considered as a mission here, okay? So it's still a missionary today that says the Mass Catholic missionary. This is our bank. We have been one of the first native, yeah, one day it's gonna work. One day it's gonna take. Never to give up. And it's the same guy since, no, that's not true. It's been the same guy since the 17th century. No, I'm kidding. That's the bank. We've been one of the first native community in Canada to have our own banking system. That changed a lot of things to have a bank here, because before the building of that bank, it was impossible for a native to have a bank loan, because we don't have a land to put up as a warranty. So unless you have a white tutor, you could not have a bank loan, because no institution from Quebec City are allowed to seize an Indian if they don't pay. So that was not at their advantage, really not. Since we have a bank here, they are allowed to seize you if you don't pay. So this permits us to have access to money, to bank loans. So this is why we have as much industries as we have here, because we have access to money since the 60s. That's been really good for the economics of the reserve. Yes?
Are other bands doing the same?
In the north, they don't have banks on their territory. So once again, what's happening here, it's a very exceptional situation, because we are close to a big city, and also because it is in the blood of the Wendat to be entrepreneur people. So we really needed this to, so the business could grow and the community could be as active as we wanted it to be. And this is our cup here. We have 9, like, and they put the best one for the picture of through the tears. Don't all look like that. We have 9 cups, men and women, for a population less than 2,000 souls. 9 cups, I think it's quite enough. Maybe too much, no. We see them always. Don't worry if you get out on the side and you see them, because it takes about 15 minutes to get around the reserve, which is currently 3 kilometers square. So they are very busy making sure that no Indian here is in danger of any kind. So the criminality rate stays at 0 always. Okay, they do a very, very good job. So now I will carry you from the present to the deep, deep past. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You see the long house now. Follow me. So in Wendat language, this kind of house is called the Anoncia. We started to live in those houses around the year 500. It is when we learned how to grow corn. From Mexico to the south of the US, the techniques of growing corn, of working in the field, came to us around the year 500, and that is when we decided to live in villages, in long houses such as this one. So it is not called a long house for no reason, it is long, but this one is relatively small. If you think that many long houses were 7 times this one. Can you imagine 7 times this one? You have enough place to run every morning, to do your exercises. It was really, really big. But also there was a lot of people sharing the space. Okay? There is one way to estimate how many people shared a house such as this one. It's by counting the fires on the ground. Here, as you can see, we have 3 fires. 2 families were in charge of each one of those fires because they should remain burning day and night. Winter and summer, 24/7, because a house with no fire was a lifeless house. So 2 families had to be in charge of each one of those. So that means that here we had 6 families living together. That's about 30 to 40 people. That's a lot. If you think that we are like half of that, it's a lot of people. But the men were seldom in the village. They were hunting, fishing, traveling a lot. So the women were really in charge of everything that went on inside the village. Every family had their corner, as you can see against the walls. Those were the beds, the very comfortable beds. The first layer of the bed, it was corn leaves. That absorbs humidity. The second layer, it was fir tree, this thing here. We believe it was protecting the body from infection. So sleeping on fir tree made us believe that if there was a contagious disease inside the house, it could prevent the illness from spreading to everybody inside the house. And of course, we did not sleep on needles. This we use as a blanket. This is beaver, the most valuable peltry of all. Of course, you want to touch it? Oh, I see in your eyes, you want to touch it. The beaver, it's not for no reason that in Canada, we have a beaver on the nickel. Look, we have a beaver on our nickel. That's because it's this cute animal that shaped the economy of our country. Simple as that. This thing here has been our first dollar bill. Can you imagine? Because we had peltries such as these, we could obtain a lot of product from the French. Metal tools, axes, needles, mirrors, cotton, glasses, anything the French could give us in exchange for those. And a small anecdote, if I may, they were considered even more valuable when we have worn them for 18 months, 15 to 18 months. You know why? Because wearing them as a coat, like this, or as a blanket, you know, with the fur against the skin, the longer hair were gone. So it was easier for the hat maker in France to make hats with the peltry when they were worn out. You believe that? So of course, in the 18th century, where trading the peltry was the pivot of the economy, it was impossible to take the time to wear them until trading them. So maybe some of my ancestors could put one worn out on top of a pile, and all of the others were new? Maybe that a little bit? Just kidding. But this was our blanket. On the second story, above the beds here, we could not sleep there because there was too much smoke inside the house. Imagine 3, 4, 6 fires burning all day. There was so much smoke that we had to let it circulate. That is why the long house is also that high. So we need enough space. Of course, at the end of winter, when we spend most of our time in the house, the men had problems with their eyes and lungs also because you breathe that smoke all the time. There was smoke down to there. Can you imagine living here and never seeing the clear blue sky? Yeah, it's exactly what happened. So we could not sleep. It was a storage space. In birch bark baskets such as this one, we put our personal belongings, clothing, shoes, tools, anything, and we store them up there. Of course, the notion of personal belongings did not exist. It was required from everybody that they share their stuff with the rest of the clan, because we were all cousins. The clan mother lived here with her sister and her sister's children. So everybody was cousin, but we called ourselves brothers and sisters because the notion of family was really tight. So the clan mother was in charge of all of those people, and like I told you earlier, she named one man to be her chief. So every clan had a chief, and the men had to meet every day to take decisions regarding the tribe. Okay? The women were in charge of working in the fields every day. We ate what we call in our culture the three sisters. What are those? They're corn, squash, and beans. Those three products were 65% of our diet, so we were mostly vegetarians during summertime. Fishing and hunting was only 5% of our diet, with also small fruits found in the forest by the men. The men were also in charge of cultivating tobacco. This was considered a secret herb. Smoking the peace pipe was not a myth, it's a reality. When you don't speak the language of someone, it was proper to sit down and smoke the peace pipe to let those people know that they are your friends. When we had French guests in the village, they come to eat. The best way to receive the guest was that the chief did not eat. Okay, he served the guests, and after the meal, everybody took about 30 minutes to sit down and smoke the peace pipe. So we need a lot of tobacco because the Wendat, they were social people. Okay, they had a lot of guests around. In fact, they were the most powerful people in the northern part of America to have corn flour. So a lot of people came to us to get their corn flour. So that is why we had to be ready to smoke the peace pipe all the time. It's a joke. The women with corn produced the corn flour in this kind of device here. With the corn flour, we could make the traditional bread, the bannock. This bread was made in corn leaves, cooked on the ground. You make a fire, and it's the ashes, the hot ashes, that cook the bread. That is how the traditional bread was made. And in a kitchenware, such as this one, we made the traditional soup, the sagamité, the Three Sisters soup. Je m'en vais, Catherine, c'est bon? Yes. Non, c'est bon, j'ai terminé. Okay. So in this final stage of the visit, I will explain to you why we live here, close to a big city, and since when we started to live here. A long time ago, the Wendat, they were living in an area called the Georgian Bay, south of the city of Toronto, in the southern part of Ontario. This is not for no reason that this one of the 5 Great Lakes is called the Lake Huron. It's because it used to belong to the Wendat Confederation. Huron is accepted, it's not an insult, but the proper way to call the nation is by saying Wendat. That means the inhabitant of the island. And Wendake, the name of our reserve today, means big island. So because we thought we live on a big island, we called our country back then Wendake. So because there was the Great Lakes, it was really easy for us to trade with other nations. North of us, the Algonquins that came to us to get their corn flour, their tobacco, and their fish also. And we also could trade with the French that had many trading posts on the St. Lawrence River, in Quebec, in Trois-Rivières, in Tadoussac. Every once in a while, the native got down to the trading post to exchange peltries against for European products. So we had a very good relationship with the French from the moment they arrived here. There was never any war between us and the French. It was when the British Army arrived in the northern part of the state of New York. The British, they allied themselves to the Iroquois, and they were so big, their army was so big that it was an instant defeat for the French and then for us, because we were the allied of the French. So we had to flee this area because the Iroquois kept attacking us all the time. From 35,000 individuals we were at the beginning of the 17th century, after the attacks from the Iroquois, we were reduced to only 300 persons. Okay, that's the 9/10 of the tribe that's been eliminated in that war. So in order to flee the attacks of the Iroquois, we had to come here to Quebec City to seek protection. So we lived around Quebec City for a while, in Beauport, in the Orléans Island, but the Iroquois kept attacking while the women were working in the field. So we had to come here, further from the St. Lawrence River, to have protection. So we arrived in this reserve in 1697. And we live here since. We stopped working the land to become entrepreneurs. So that is why there are a lot of industries here. This is in our blood, it's always been. And if you are wondering why the physical features of the Wendat are not as obvious as those living in the north or in the prairies, it's because there's been a lot of mixed wedding for 3 centuries now. It was the dream of the man who founded Quebec City, Samuel de Champlain. His dream was that the French and the native married to found one people. So 3 centuries later, here we are. Surprise! So that's what it did. So this is for the history of our presence here. It's been 3 centuries now, okay? And finally, I would like to talk to you about hunting. Because it was not with a great joy that we killed animals. The natives were in accord with nature, so we always considered the animal to be our equals. So every time there was a big hunt, there was also big ceremonies to liberate the spirit of the animal. It was really, really important to ask Mother Earth the permission to go hunting the next day. So we had big ceremonies during which the men wore the skin of the animal and dance around to liberate the soul of the animals they are going to kill. So this is the typical deer trap that the native used to kill deer. This trap took 10 days to build. Can you imagine? It took 25 men to cut the trees needed to build such a trap. In French, it is called embarras. Okay, that's how we call it. When it was ready, 2 openings were left at the end of the structure. And then the animals were running towards the trap, and it was when they tried to get out by the sides that it was possible to hunt them. And then, after the hunt, the men would go back on the field to put tobacco on the ground to thank Mother Earth because of the sacrifice of the animal. We were going to be able to survive one more winter. Okay? So therefore, we use everything in the animal that we could. The bones to make some tools, the fat to build some canoes. We use also the skin to make some clothing. So when you see antlers, is that the right word for it? So when you see that, it's not as a trophy. It is really a tribute for the animal that lost his life, so I can keep mine. Okay? Any more questions? Good. Follow me now. So this cute little tent here is called the sweating lodge. It's exactly like the sauna. Oh yes, but it was used for purification purposes and also in decision making. I told you about the clan that had a chief. Each clan had a chief. Every day they met in the longhouse to speak about what we're going to do. Where are we going? So if they did not come to an understanding, they would use the sweating lodge to gather in circle and all meditate on the same question. That's how they resolve problems. Today, the men, they go to spas. Yeah, yeah. So things have not changed since those times. There was a preparation that you did before the use of the hunt. First of all, you fast. You fast for 24 to 48 hours prior to the use of the hut. So you cleanse your body. After that, in a big seashell, you burn 4 sacred herbs. Tobacco was the sacred herb. Sage, white cedar, and with a big feather you bring the smoke to the face to wash your soul, okay? After that, you are ready for the ritual. The men would heat up rocks on a fire just beside the hut. With big wooden tongs, they would bring back the rocks inside. And with the weeping pot, like that, they would pour the water on the rocks to get the steam going. We call that the weeping pot.
Yeah.
You hear the noise? Because it looks like someone who's crying. Well, like this.
Oh yes.
This was used a lot in funeral rituals. You see? So that's what they use in this ritual. After that, the men would close the door and all sit using the fetal position. They had to use that position, first of all, because they were 6 or 7 or 8 at the same time, and also because the tent, by its shape, it represents the womb of the mother. Okay, so it was the proper way to sit inside. After that, all the men would meditate on the same question. And the first one to get a vision, they would listen to and act accordingly. Of course, being 6 or 7 or 8 men inside of it, with the heat, the steam, the answer would come quickly. It was like the email of the process. You don't stay in the hut 8 hours, okay? After an hour and a half, the process was done. The men had all the answers they needed and they could get out of the sweating lodge. The women did not use the hut for purification purposes because in our culture, the women were considered naturally pure. Yeah, even today. So it was only the men that used the hut, and when the priests arrived in the native villages at the beginning of the 17th century, and when they saw the ritual, they witnessed the ritual, they thought that the men were speaking to the devil. Can you imagine? So that's why they called the hut the little house of Satan. Of course, it was a very pure ritual, very spiritual, and even today, really hardcore traditionalists, they still use a sweating lodge in their everyday life. Any questions? Now, talking about sacred, we will go into the hut of the shaman, the medicine man, the healer of the village. That's the only place on the site where it is forbidden to take pictures, because there are sacred masks inside that hut, and the traditionalists, they don't want the mask to be taken in pictures, okay? So, let's go. So everything that you ever heard about our winters, it's not, it's true. It's not exaggerated. Okay, we have cruel, long winters with a lot of snow, 6 months a year. So imagine my ancestors, they could not just go to the grocery store when they needed to have some meat. They need to think in advance to keep it, to preserve their meat. There was 2 ways. The first one was by using the smoker that you see here. The smoker was made out of white cedar bark. This is the white cedar. Inside, we light up a fire and feed this fire with green, moist wood in order to produce a big, dense, thick smoke. Or some people could add some maple wood for the little sweet taste. The fish was smoked for 1 or 2 hours. The deer or elk meat was smoked for 3 or 4 hours, and then we could preserve that meat for up to 6 months in birch bark baskets outside of the longhouse in the natural freezer that we are lucky enough to have here. If we did not smoke the meat, there was a plan B. This is the typical dryer. It's made out of white cedar trunks this time. The fish and the meat was let to dry under the sunlight. We did not use salt. And after that, it was grinded, okay, into flakes with a mortar, a big stone. Those meaty flakes we call pemmican. This is really, really important for the native life because the pemmican is the emergency food reserve. At the end of winter, when the clan mother looks at what is left to eat inside the house, and she sees that the situation becomes critical, she would say, now let's start with the pemmican reserve. That means that everybody will have their equal share. By adding water and animal fat to it, it triples in volume, exactly like if you ate oatmeal. So it was a very high protein food that could permit to survive throughout the rest of the winter. Okay, and the pemmican is exactly like the food, the dry food the astronaut bring to space in their little envelope. The hunters, when they had to leave the village for 5-6 days, they bring pemmican with them in a little leather bag such as this one. It was more practical than to carry actual meat and bread with them. They did not need to hunt while they were hunting for the rest of the tribe. So it's always practical to have some pemmican on their hand. Any questions? All right, let's continue.